I'm very pleased to welcome our next speaker, Stefano Ceccotto. Stefano is an architect and urban designer. He has a Master of Science in Architecture and Urban Design at Columbia University in New York. He's Technical Director within the international consulting firm NET Engineering, as well as guest lecturer and thesis supervisor at the University of Bologna. He is an author of awarded and internationally published projects and collaborates with institutions, among which CRO, Liveable, Fondazione Golinelli, Fondazione del Monte, and in the field of research and authorship of essays and scientific publications. Stefano has many important achievements, amongst those being the involvement and ongoing involvement with the Romani Prati Urban Rehabilitation Project in Bologna within the C40's City Climate Leadership Group. Please join me in welcoming Stefano to the stage.
Is it on? Well, thank you very much, Audrey, for such a kind introduction. Thank you to ARBH for the invitation, so prestigious, to the International Trade Agency of Italy and to the Embassy of Italy in Qatar, which I especially thank for hospitality. In a further hesitation, let's address the subject of this presentation. What's the C40? C40 is a strategy, is a self-spontaneous choice by a community, in the case of Bologna, by the city of Bologna, and by the National Rail Yard Agency, RFI, in a moment when the community wants to sell a significant portion of their land, and they impose themselves a regulation, an extra regulation that goes far behind the bylaws that we have, in this case in Italy. So in the moment of transfer or sale of a significant portion of land, the public entity imposes an agenda, the agenda of C40, articulated in 10 challenges in this case, to the prospective buyers. So the prospective buyer will have the right to buy the portion of land if he presents a project that meets the challenge and that responds to the challenges. Projects by C40 are spread all over the world, and in Italy in particular they're concentrated in Milan and in Bologna. In Bologna, the case study we're analyzed today is the Romani Prati project, of which our team is currently involved as a finalist. State partners of the project are NET Engineering, Man and Steve's Rimon, that you might know in Qatar because of the pavilion, and was State as the Dutch landscape artist, I would say. Of course, there's a financial side, because this is a contract of buying, so KPMG is our specialist in the case. Stakeholders, very important, are the Interdepartmental Center for Research in Building and Materials of the University of Bologna, represented by Professor Ernesto Antonini. So, there we go. The area of the project sets like 3 kilometers from the historic center of Bologna and roughly 200 meters from the historic Via Emilia, the Roman road that gives the name to the entire region. The project is articulated in 2 areas, crossing the rail yard that goes to Milan. That's why the property is from the public rail company. What we will present today is not the project. It is a method that lays behind the project. It's a project of the project. A reasoning that we developed together with the University of Bologna already in the next field seminar. I believe Laura, you participated the day before my speech to this seminar last year, okay? So it's a reasoning out of a collective mind that many professionals from different disciplines, everybody used the word multidisciplinary, I think, in all the presentation. I will do too. And yes, so what we're going to try to do today is to see what's the role of urban green within this methodology. From the abstract idea of beautification of the environment to the practical tool of design. As I said, the reinventing city process is articulated in 10 challenges that go from LCA assessment, energy, to the high quality. So from efficiency to aesthetics, I would say. 6 challenges over 10 entail a very strong and fundamental green component. So if you don't think about green, you will not respond to the challenges. That's like number one. All of this is self-imposed. Nobody obliges us to do that, okay? That's a key point of the old structure. It's voluntary. So let's begin analyzing one by one these challenges. Challenge number 4, everybody, I feel the bad guy because urban designers are the masters of urbanization, which is the damage. And everybody acknowledged that the number 1 effect of urbanization is the heat island effect. So how to contrast that heat island effect? Again, I'm really sorry to repeat things that have been really, let's say, said by other very eminent colleagues, but solutions are around since a long time. Heat island effect, number 1 mitigation strategy is maximize the green spaces. All energetic environmental protocols such as Liveable and as well as JCS. Ruben said that in the very first day. So number 1, maximize the amount of green. By the way, I would like to call out your attention on a specific urban design, compositive matter, let's call it like that. Green goes with built fabric, of course, because density is necessary. All literature agrees on the fact that density is mandatory in this historical phase. Just to quote Professor Spiros Pondalis, by the way, Zofna's program of the Harvard University, one of the authors of the Envision Protocol, always begins his conferences with jokes. There's on one side a picture of New York, and on the other the picture of, I believe, Uwitown, a garden town in New Jersey, yes. What's the most sustainable? Of course, everybody says New York because the audience is educated. It's because a sprawl car-driven is the number 1 enemy for urban design and sustainability. That's why, on the other hand, just density wouldn't be sustainable for a built environment. That's why the rule that we try to follow is to balance the ratio between a high FAR. To give you a milestone, FAR full area ratio is the parameter that measures density in cities. Shanghai 22, Midtown New York 18. This project, Jagapo Gardens City by Skip Mullins and Merrill, is around 5. Italy, less than 1. So we have a lot of exercises to do by standard regulation. So let's play another exercise that we typically do at the university. Tell what you see. Tell what you see because the focus now is to understand what kind of functions, so the software layer of design, shall be introduced in a very efficient master plan onto the perspective of sustainability to grant a functional connection between users and the built fabric and green spaces. Because some of the challenges, in particular number 5, which we will describe right now, is to promote a sustainable lifestyle and green job. I will not discuss sustainable lifestyle because my eminent colleagues have really explained it way better than me. But I just would like to point out that if you do not mix up functions in your planning exercises, in this case, residential, a club housing, a social center, and a network of running path, you will not be able to activate relationships with the local community, the general public, of course, including senior and disabled citizens, and eventual visitors like myself in Qatar, or anyone who wants to have a run. In case of commercial function, you will also activate retailers and food operators. So what's the green rule in this? Green is the common ground to connect the functions included in a mixed-use functional breakdown of the master plan. Another exercise, if we geometrically translate the green layer, which is at grade, onto the top of a building, what happens? Another activation functions. Firstly, by the local community who uses the building, and secondarily, educational programs that can involve schools, elderly associations. These pictures that you see on the right side are actually in Bologna. It's a program of involvement for senior citizens in the harvesting of urban farming on top of their buildings. This is social housing in Bologna. From urban farming to vertical farming is an easy step. Essentially the same concept in another configuration. On one hand, we have something which is man-made and harvested by the community. On the other is for industrial, let's call it industrial and commercial purposes. Agro-alimentary independence, for instance, in a place like Qatar plays a particular role, such kind of solution. Of course, a vertical farm is not man-operated and needs strong support from robotics and cybernetics in order to operate and pick up the products that are at the very end of the lines of production. Oh, that's very important in my personal opinion, because sustainable water and water management resources is a sort of precondition for all the things we have seen until now, and it plays a particular role in here where we are right now. It's a prerequisite, I don't know, that is acknowledged by, again, all the most well-known protocols like Liveable and so on. So what we will present in regard to this challenge is a study that we elaborated together with GBCI, the Green Building Council of Italy, for a typical case scenario, because C40 looks for a replicable solution. Is not enough to think about your own garden, you have to think about the whole community. So whenever you design something for C40, you have to think also how to replicate it in another similar case. Based on our experience, we're contracted for the rail yards as one of our business activities, as per net, I would say. We began to study a typical case of each Italian city. Who's familiar with Italy probably noticed that, because it's the first place where you arrive, the rail station. Each rail station, not all of them, but the vast majority of rail stations in Italy is organized along this scheme on the left side. There is a building, by the way, this is a memory of the past. Now stations, they don't have buildings anymore, but they do have a square in front of it. This is the Bologna station, and these are like a number of other stations. Some of them are designed by us or not, where the same configuration is replicated. So a vast, impermeable space right in front of the building. This is another enemy we need to fight. So what are the 3 easy steps to make out of that public space a water collection device? Number 1, desigillation. Luckily, mostly of our city acknowledged by their bylaws and regulation the need of open-up paving and passing from hard to softscape. Not necessarily planted, but at least open joints. Second step, install or design proper water capture device and water storage in place to reuse water for watering whatever kind of plantation. Third step, you will provide to new space in order to, again, a valuable measure against Italian effect. We made a quick exercise evaluating average annual precipitation with a very scary result. Yesterday I was discussing with Professor Marcello Vitale and the fact that the floodplain of River Po, where it comes from, where Bologna sits, that was like historically since the imperial era of Italy, since the Roman Empire, was our reservoir of water, agriculture, and the most fertile land we have. Well, now, it rains more in Liveable than in Bologna. Nevertheless, with the average catchment area that we can get in front of the station, roughly 4,000 square meters, what we can do? Support the life in Bologna of roughly 120,000 families, 3 people, equivalent to 7 residential units, Italian residential units, not Qatar. So 16 apartments, okay? Or we could water vegetated land. In Naples, with 4,000 square meters of water catchment area, we would be able to support the life of a park as big as 16 soccer fields. In Bologna, is 6. That's scary for me, very honestly. Well, another challenge tackles with faces with biodiversity. And here I would like to use as an example a very beautiful project by one of our partners for state, the new ambushed dunes, Dutch professional, will excuse my pronunciation, in Patten, in the Netherlands. So, biodiversity entails the relationship with a different kind of users, that in this case is fauna. Pollinators, animals, and whomever creator uses the land. So the first thing is to individuate the users, associate a kind of active landscape that responds to their needs, restore the habitat by composing the different landscape into a sequence that work together, and finally relate with the function. In this case, the dunes shall be accessible from general public, passing through the restored habitat. The two flows can't mix, so that's why elevated walkways are provided in order to access the dunes without touching the ecosystem. All right, now, I remind myself that I'm an architect, and I will talk like an architect finally. So, conclusion of all of this is a kind of reasonings that, in my opinion, okay, let's put it this way. I genuinely think that we are on the verge of a change as per urban design. I think that Professor Marx used the word, architects are not anymore the almighty God, right? I couldn't agree more. Well, they also use architects as facilitators. I would use the word of national glory of Portugal, Mr. Caesar, that I had the privilege to study with, catalyst. We ought to be the catalyst of a number of needs by the community, by the social sphere, by the ecosystem, and compose them into a project that not only begins from a scientific speculation, but ends up in a qualitative environment. In particular, another subject of discussion with Mr. Khan was that some of these ideas are circulating among intellectuals since the very beginning of last century, in 1922. Immeuble Villa, Le Corbusier, the idea to replicate green and vertical is not new. It's something that we know. Passive design. I refer to the very interesting opening speech of Erfner by Dr. Allow me to read that, because I noticed today. The opening speech by Erfner that was focusing on traditional ways to rebuild techniques that are ancient but very active. Passive design is key. Is again a prerequisite in order to go forward in the design of new buildings, both on the aesthetic and functional design. This meets the most recent European regulations, such as the European taxonomy, that do not substantially harm. Who would design an arcade on the north or a glazing facade on the south? No, not anymore. That's wrong. Aesthetics are not meant to influence architecture anymore as in the past. We need to face the need to respond to a number of other needs and requests. They are not just going with the conceptual process of a building. Okay. Secondarily, on an urban design scale, again, it's the same thing translated to another scale. Double meaning of functional design into aesthetic regeneration. Well, this slide, I think that I wish that this slide comments by itself. This is before and after the plaza in front of the station of Bologna, where we actually begin the conception from the needs of the plaza to provide a microclimate, shadows, easier access to the station, also to bring a more pleasant space, a more functional space for the bus station. But how we design this element? On one reading could be, okay, someone imitated the traditional culture of arcades in Bologna. You choose a color that matches the context. Or you can think, okay, you provided a shade that got us water. You provided trees because it was too dry. The coexistence of these two agendas, aesthetic and functional and ecologic, is what, in my humble opinion, should drive urban design and architecture along the next year. Thank you.
Stefano, thank you. That's excellent. I really like the idea of the replicability of your work, of doing it to address in one place, but taking the generic principles to another place. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for your interest. You've covered the subject so thoroughly that there are no questions come through, but again, there's lots of time this afternoon, and there are a lot of questions that I have about your work. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, audience.